Experiments in the Revival of Organisms. Experiments in the Revival of Organisms is a 20-minute Soviet film from 1940 documenting a series of revolutionary and disturbing experiments led by Dr. Sergei Brukhonenko. And the footage shows his medical team attempting to reanimate clinically dead organisms by using a peculiar array of contraptions designed with that purpose in mind. The experiments were filmed at the Institute of Experimental Physiology and Therapy in Moscow, and the project was funded by the Soviet government. Most of the experiments showcased in the footage revolve around an apparatus called an autojektor, a heart-lung machine similar to modern extracorporeal membrane oxygenation devices that is able to stimulate organs into action even with lifeless organisms. The documentary begins with the testimony of British scientist J.B.S. Haldane, who relates how he has personally oversaw the procedures in the film and how they saved countless lives during World War II. The footage starts with a shot of the isolated heart of a dog, as the organ appears to be connected to the autojektor through 4 tubes. The peculiar device then starts to pump blood into the lifeless heart, which in turn seems to beat regularly, as if it was still inside the live canine. The scene is then followed by a similar experiment, this time showing a dog's lung on a tray. The lung is connected to the contraption, which appears to pump air into the organ. The lung then inflates and deflates rhythmically, as if it were still functioning inside the animal. The film then shows the autojektor machine, composed of a pair of linear diaphragm pumps, venous and arterial tubes that allow oxygen exchange within a water reservoir. The device appears to be supplying the decapitated head of a dog with oxygenated blood. In what is considered the most disturbing scene in the infamous documentary, the bodiless dog's head is then stimulated with the help of a feather, and the head responds by reacting to the stimuli. For the final scene, the researchers bring a live dog and then proceed to get it to clinical death. After a 10-minute lapse, they connect the corpse to the autojektor, and within a few minutes, the dog starts to breathe and react to stimuli. The researchers end the documentary by claiming that the dog went on to live a long and healthy life. Since the documentary's release, many people have questioned the validity of its claims. Still, the experiments have not been scientifically debunked. The Mystery of the Twinbee Tiles. A 2011 documentary titled Resurrect Dead: The Mystery of the Twinbee Tiles depicts an apparently unexplainable phenomenon in cities across the American continent as far back as the 1980s. The film depicts Philadelphia residents Justin Dwyer, John Foy, Colin Smith, and Steve Weineck attempting to discover the source of the mysterious Twinbee tiles that have appeared in their city and in many others across the globe. The Twinbee tiles are cryptic messages of unknown origin made of pieces of tile implanted in asphalt streets in about 24 major U.S. cities and 4 South American capitals. The earliest samples were found in the 1980s, and they've continued to appear regularly since then. They all depict a variation of the following message: Twinbee idea, in movie 2001, Resurrect Dead, on planet Jupiter. At first, the materials used to create the tiles were unknown. Still, later research revealed that they were primarily made of layers of linoleum and asphalt crack-filling compound. Hundreds of Twinbee tiles have been documented across the decades, but many of them were removed by local governments soon after their first appearance. The message depicted on the tiles has been the subject of many interpretations, but they all seem to reference Stanley Kubrick's 1968 film 2001: A Space Odyssey, the planet Jupiter, Arnold Toynbee's book Experiences, and possibly other science fiction works, such as Ray Bradbury's The Twinbee Convector. John Foy's 2011 documentary attempts to prove that the mastermind behind the Twinbee tiles is a secluded Philadelphia resident named Severino Sevi Verna. The film argues that Verna impersonated a man called James Marasco, who in 1983 called several live TV talk shows and radio programs to talk about his theory of colonizing Jupiter with the dead inhabitants of Earth, claiming to have gotten the idea while reading a book by Arnold Toynbee. The mysterious caller assured the audience that Toynbee's book contained a theory on bringing lifeless molecules back to life on Jupiter. Evidence of this could be found in the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. However, Verna denies being the person behind the cryptic tiles. The Imposter. The 2012 documentary The Imposter tells the incredible real-life story of how French confidence trickster Frédéric Baudin stole the identity of Nicholas Barclay, an American boy who went missing in 1994. Nicholas Barclay disappeared in 1994 from his home in San Antonio, Texas. After years of a desperate search by his family, they received a call telling them that Nicholas had been found in Spain. The man claiming to be Nicholas assured he had been kidnapped and used as a sexual slave by Mexican, European, and US military personnel, and that he was taken to Spain against his will. His impersonation was so convincing that he fooled officials in Spain and the US, and was even entirely accepted by many of Barclay's family members. Strangely, he was taken in by the family, even when he was older than Barclay, spoke with a heavy French accent, and had brown eyes and dark hair, rather than Barclay's blue eyes and blonde hair. A documentalist working on the story noticed the vast array of physical discrepancies and focused on the man's ears, which had a completely different shape than Nicholas's. The imposter had been able to lie his way out of the many inconsistencies in his story by saying that he had picked up the French accent after months of living in France, and also that his captors had altered his eye color so it would be harder for him to be identified. When the reporter took his evidence to the police, they finally decided to conduct a DNA test. The results finally revealed that the man adopted by the Barclay family was actually Frédéric Baudin, a known imposter who had infiltrated several families before. Astoundingly, many members of the Barclay family continued to assure that the imposter was their relative, and not even a confession by the perpetrator would dissuade them. The documentary implies that the eagerness shown by the Barclays to take the man in might suggest that they had something to do with his disappearance. The Institute. The Institute is a 2013 film that tells the Jejune Institute social experiment story. Through interviews with the participants and some creators, the documentary depicts how artist Jeff Hull created a massive-scale alternate reality game that included more than 10,000 players. The game began with a series of mysterious flyers spread across San Francisco, which invited people to join them at the Institute, an office building in the city designated for the induction process. The game consisted of following a wide array of intricate clues through the city, and participants would also face all sorts of strange events that would push them forwards in the narrative. The players' random encounters ranged from flash mob performances, masked mimes, and all sorts of peculiar and uncanny characters. The strange occurrences planned for the game forced players to interact with strangers while putting them in uncomfortable situations, and the game's intensity made many players feel like they were part of a cult or a secret society. The game lasted 3 years, and the scavenger hunts and street performances became more strange and intricate as time went on. Many of the participants reported that the game took a heavy psychological toll on them, as many of them found themselves struggling to discern which events were part of the game and which were part of their routine lives. Realms of the Unreal. In the Realms of the Unreal is a 2004 film depicting the strange case of Henry Darger, a man who lived his entire life as a humble janitor in a Chicago hospital and warranted no special attention for his seemingly uneventful life. Nevertheless, after he had passed away in 1973, it was discovered that he was an eccentric and mysterious artist whose work would shock the world. Besides dozens of intricate watercolor depictions of idyllic scenes and Edwardian interiors, and tranquil flowered landscapes populated by children and fantastic creatures, Henry Darger's most important work would be the story of the Vivian girls in what is known as the Realms of the Unreal of the Glandeco-Angelinian war storm caused by the Child Slave Rebellion. Created over 6 decades, the over 15,000-page novel depicts an epic fantasy world and the struggle of a group of children against an evil race of child slavers. The manuscript has several hundred watercolor illustrations as big as 30 feet wide. The plot of the story relates the adventures of the daughters of Robert Vivian, 7 princesses of the Christian nation of Abyania, who join a valiant rebellion against child slavery inflicted by John Manley and the Glandolinians. The children battle their enemies frequently to end up slain or viciously tortured by the Glandolinian overlords. The elaborate mythology includes the setting of a giant planet around which Earth orbits as a moon. The story is violent, unfathomable, and unnerving, and the author depicts himself in the book as a protector of children. To this day, nobody knows the exact meaning of the book, or why he produced such an epic fantasy without seeking any recognition. Thank you for watching my video. Which documentary are you most eager to watch? Let us know in the comment section below, and make sure to subscribe to our Dark Documentaries channels for more exciting content. Stay tuned.